Welcome back to the Health Longevity Secret Show with Dr. Robert Lufkin. Today, I'm joined by the CEO of a revolutionary company that is biohacking longevity through personalized nutrition. Patrick Samy is CEO of Span Health. He was previously at Microsoft and a researcher at Stanford University. He is now in remission from his diabetes. Please visit us at robertlufkinmd.com to see the full transcript and show notes.
Thanks again for your support of this video podcast. We appreciate any reviews that you provide, which help us to spread the word of the work that we do. As a thanks for your review, we will send you a copy of one of our most popular guests' book, The Path, Mastering the 9 Pillars of Resilience and Success by Dr. Steven Sideroff. To receive it, just email a screenshot of your review along with your name and US address and include the title The Path to mail, M-A-I-L, at robertlufkinmd.com. We're sorry that we can only ship to US addresses at this time.
Now enjoy this interview with Patrick Samy. Patrick Samy, thank you so much for joining us on the Health Longevity Secret Show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's truly great to have you on our show. I've been following Span Health for a long time, and I'm really excited about our audience learning about the great work you're doing. Perhaps you could start off by telling us how you came to be doing this.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think I've necessarily trained or studied this specific area of health, fitness, behavior change, or anything like that directly. But I think first and foremost, I've been an athlete for a long time in my life. I've been playing tennis since a young age. I competed in high school, in college, and then I pretty much almost stopped playing or just kept playing for fun and not training for performance anymore. And at the same time, I've been that kid who grew up with a computer in the early 90s and then with the internet and building stuff online. So, as an engineer. And as a result of working, I think, at a desk for 8 hours during the day, spending 3 years at Microsoft, building computer products, software products for Skype, I think my lifestyle had dramatically changed. I didn't pay attention to how my health was impacted. And it was very obvious when I did the blood test, when I was 28, after 3 years there, that a lot of my markers of long-term health, like triglyceride levels, blood sugar levels, fasting, were increasing. HDL was going down. All these markers of long-term health were essentially not in a good place. They were not above the normal range, apart from sometimes, my blood sugar levels were definitely in the pre-diabetic range. I feel like that's something that I've been able to put in remission. But I think what was interesting is I thought I was doing the right thing. I was following public health recommendations. I was eating a balanced diet from whole foods, no soda, no snacks. If you work for a tech company today, that's something that's really hard to avoid because they put it everywhere in the fridges and so on. But, on the other side, I was also exercising 3 times a week for 3 hours. And it was surprising to me that I was moving in this direction, which I had seen a lot of people in my family move into and get conditions like prediabetes, full-blown type 2, or cardiovascular illnesses when they're 60, 70, in that age range. And so I was actively trying to avoid that already and thinking I was doing the right thing. Obviously, I was realizing I was physically fit from the outside, and from the inside, it was clear that that wasn't the case. And I started looking into why that would be, and thought that there must be something counterintuitive that I'm doing with my diet, sleep, or exercise that led me to this point. And so I got a lot of data to answer that question. I got this Oura ring that I'm still wearing, the Apple Watch, continuous glucose monitor that I wore almost straight for 6 months, even though, in theory, I wasn't type 2 diabetic yet, or was just trying to prevent. But it was an extremely useful tool for that purpose. Looking at my sleep with the ring was also extremely useful. And I did this for 2 months myself, and getting all the low-hanging fruits that I think a lot of people who listen to, people like you and people in this space, Dr. Peter Attia, Dr. Wanda Patrick, David Sinclair, Matthew Walker, who publish a lot of great content for free online these days, would be able to get. And so you'd be able to solve the 20% of things that are most obvious when you've got the right advice. But the 80% remaining that gets you to, you know, I know exactly my long-term trend, and I know that my blood sugar levels are stable, and I don't have to worry about waking up 15 years down the line, going for an HbA1c check and realizing that I'm over the range, which happens for, unfortunately, a lot of people these days with, you know, some say with the latest studies, 88% of the population in the US is metabolically has a metabolic dysfunction or disorder. And so bearing all of that in mind, I tried to do it myself, and I failed. I mean, I was able to identify something minor, like I need a lot of fiber to be able to control a spike from carbohydrates. So when I do have something that has a lot of starch, for example, pasta, potatoes, I need a lot more fiber than the average person probably to control that. Probably, you know, a genetic factor. I started looking at my 23andMe data, and, you know, I could also associate some of the behaviors that I was observing to the gene variants that were in my DNA tests. And so it was obvious to me that I needed some help. I went to my primary care physician with this data. I couldn't get any support, really. I don't think they're equipped with the time, any of the sort of the tools that allows them to look at the data to be able to do that, unfortunately, today. But there is, you know, a lot of people who practice with a functional approach in functional medicine, in sports medicine, in longevity medicine. And I think this is something that's increasingly becoming a larger segment of the population that's interested in those types of services. And so a lot of the reasons why I decided to reach out to two of my friends who are a longevity specialist, an MD, and a health coach who really practice in this way. And they've been able to help me unlock this value that I thought was behind the data. And in the end, I think I was right, but I was not able to unlock this value by myself. What we did is we had a spreadsheet that we were updating every week with the sleep data from the ring, with the training data from the watch, with the CGM data on my metabolic responses to foods and even exercise. And we would look at it on a weekly basis and check in and figure out what is the next step. What is the one thing we can change to drive one of the markers that seem to be the most the best, you know, area of improvement, so that we almost diagnose, and how do we work on this? And so we did this for 6 months, and overall, you know, a lot of changes, a lot of positive habits that I picked up from doing this, dramatically improved my mental clarity, my energy levels, you know, been playing tennis for 25 years by that point, and I'd never measured my recovery and anything related to how my fitness or health is impacting my performance. But I started doing that, and it was really impressive to see that I was able to play for an hour and did feel exhausted at the end. So the number of mistakes I would make playing in the last 15 minutes was completely lowered by this ability to play at the same capacity. And so pushing different aspects of, you know, doing heart rate zone 2 training and pushing my anaerobic respiration, and all these things allowed me to get into that stage. Unfortunately, with COVID, I've lost some of this, and I'm rebuilding it now. I've just started playing again when the restrictions were lifted here a month and a half ago, and I saw that was I lost some of it here. I'm trying to rebuild that. The other aspect was also on you know, the data we found on the CGM and heart rate variability. And so my glucose levels were extremely variable at night. I had ups and downs that weren't explainable. When Adam and Rachel looked at this, they thought the only thing we know is that glucose variability is probably not a good idea in the long term. If you have that every night for, you know, 20, 25 years, it's probably going to build up some sort of insulin resistance in the long run. You probably don't want that. And what we also expect when we saw this on healthy individuals is a curve that is naturally smooth, that goes down probably when you're in deep sleep at the lowest, and then goes back up again in the morning. And I did not have that. So they looked at the variability and how it was correlated to the amount of time I spent fasting after dinner every night. And there was a clear correlation. So when I spent, you know, 4 to 5 hours fasting, So I had dinner and left enough time before I went to bed. I went to bed with fasting blood sugar numbers, as opposed to having a spike of 10 points and going to bed with numbers that weren't back to fasting levels already, and the variability was increased. And so for 2 to 3 weeks, we did this experiment of eating as close to 6 p.m. as possible, which left 4.5 to 5 hours of fasting in the evening. And the first 3 to 4 days, we saw that lower variability, like we expected. But after day 5,
I'm sorry to interrupt it. So you fasted after dinner, but then until the next morning, right? Or you had a late night snack.
No,
so would it be like 12 hours of fasting, or?
Yeah, I think pretty much in that range. Yeah, so extending how much time I fasted in the evening, and therefore the overall amount of fasting was probably in the 12-hour range.
Got it. Okay, good.
The key was really leaving enough time for my blood sugar levels to go back to baseline before going to bed. And not doing that seemed to be correlated with the variability. And so we thought, okay, that's a correlation. We don't know if extending the time will actually allow you to control that. Is it the cause of the issue? And so what we ended up doing is consistently for 2 weeks, eating as close to 6 p.m. as possible and looking at the variability again. And what was obvious after day 5, like I said before, is the variability started to reduce up to the point where the curve was getting smoother by the day. And I think at day 10, not even, I had that natural curve you expect for a healthy individual. So no more, random spikes in the middle of the night that nobody could explain. And I kept doing this for 3 months. The effect was that by eating exactly the same thing and exercising in exactly the same way, my blood sugar levels were going down. And so I was probably eating way too late for someone who has a slow metabolism, which again, we started looking at 23andMe data. I have all the gene variants for a slow metabolism for a lot of compounds found in drinks and foods that we eat, caffeine and all these things. And so, that we barely scratched the surface in terms of what we know there on, genetics and epigenetics and all these things. But that was enough to really understand the behavior that we expected for my body and to be able to respond to it with a change, an intervention that led to an improvement. And ultimately, I found other ways to mitigate that now. So if I do have a late dinner that had more carbs than I expect on a normal meal, going for a walk after allows me to push this sugar back in the muscles and actually use it before going to bed, which seems to have the same effect or a similar effect, at least on the variability at night. And it's also something that I've seen improve. So I can maybe tolerate more than before. Maybe I had some mild insulin resistance at the time, and so eating later now, maybe 3 hours, 4 hours from going to bed, doesn't create that variability. So I wonder if by doing this for enough time, I've actually restored some sensitivity here and went back to normal balance of insulin and glucose levels. So that was the main discovery. A lot of other things like heart rate variability took 30 hours on average to go back to baseline. Every time I was exercising in the morning, and I was exercising fasted. We didn't know if that was the reason, but it went back normal in 12, 15, 17 hours max, so half the time on average. And we thought it's extremely strange that you see such a difference. And so I ended up doing it. And then we started looking at the sleep data because we didn't know why that was the case. And so the hypothesis was if you exercise too late, you sleep badly, and then it's a rolling ball effect. And overall, you're not recovering as fast as you should. And and it was completely correlated to the amount of time I was actually spending during the day, not necessarily extremely active. Not sure if that's again related to a slow metabolism, but in my case, exercising in the first part of the day before 2 p.m. and fasted leads to the best, the least amount of detriment on sleep, at least in the evening. And so if I exercise too late during the day, I tend to sleep a lot worse and have, less recovery sleep specifically, and a lot more interruptions during sleep.
Oh, interesting. So do you, and that's your current plan now for your activity for intermittent feeding? You eat your dinner and then don't eat until the next day. And when do you have your first meal the next day?
I tend to have my first meal around 1 p.m., probably 12 to 1 p.m. So it's still very extended these days. I've experimented with, going back to just 3 meals a day. Um, it's not something that I naturally find easy to do. And so I don't want to go too much against by forcing the experiment. I did it for 2 or 3 weeks. I couldn't find any benefits and I couldn't find that, I really liked it. So I went back to normal there. So 2 meals a day. And I try to have the same foods every time I change something else. But now I experiment a lot with different exercise patterns, trying to do heart rate zone 2 training, strength lifting, and these kind of things, and see what is the impact on other markers as well.
Yeah, I love the mission statement, or what you're doing, an integrated nutrition platform for biohacking longevity. That's beautiful. So in addition to the nutrition, it sounds like you integrate exercise into it as well. Is the coaching on different methods of exercising, stress, endurance, aerobic, anaerobic, that kind of thing as well?
Exactly, all of these things plus sleep. I think one of the deep beliefs we have in the team is that all of these things need to be considered together, because it's almost as if it's all the inputs that we can directly control. And so sleep hygiene and the ability to tune the timing of diet and exercise based on your sleep, the type of exercise, the type of dietary pattern is really important to maintain good level of health or keep optimizing, which is a lot of the things that our users are interested in. Is how do I unlock the next step? And so based on my experience, we defined what span would be. And we realized that a lot of people who own those devices today are even more curious and interested in optimizing their health. And so that's pretty much what we do today. We've got this mobile platform where you can, on the app, connect all your Apple Watch, your Oura ring, your levels, CGM, or any other CGM on the market. Garmin and so on. And then basically your coach will look at this data, will on the first call define your goals, take a little bit of history and understand what is the thing you want to reach. Internally in the team, they'll discuss that with our MD, specialized in sports medicine or longevity medicine. And they look at the data in correlation with your activity during the day, whether it's exercise, what you're eating, and all these things. And they'll set up a report on diet, sleep, and exercise based on their intuition and the scientific literature and our library of experiments, a list of the interventions that we suggest, probably up to 5 for each area, and a specific goal. So where the area of improvement could be not the low-hanging fruit, but maybe your resting heart rate is a bit high for your age, and that's something that you want to improve overall, your overall fitness, so it correlates with your goal. So we're going to try to bring that to maybe a 5% deficit every month. So not taking things too quickly, but really looking at the progress. And then obviously, if that's the goal, we'll probably focus on, unless your sleep quality is really reduced, we'll probably focus on exercise. And so we'll have a specific exercise experiment every 2 weeks that will allow us to test different patterns of exercise to see if you can really reach that deficit on a monthly basis. And then it's almost like a game. The app shows you your average heart rate last week, the average heart rate this week, and you see the progress, the relative progress here. So, at the end of the month, you need to get minus 10%. You see minus 2-3% every week, and you see that you're kind of on that trend. And so people really like this approach of playing with that, almost as if they're playing a game. Or sometimes a lot of our users are into data science or financials, and so they use data for these business applications in their life all the time, and they just want to apply that method to their health in some way.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. And you mentioned you did 23andMe for yourself. Do the people in your program also, do you use the genetic SNP data for them as well?
Yeah, not all of them do it, but what we found is that maybe a third of our users right now have done any sort of DNA test. And so 23andMe is the company that we can integrate with on the platform. But on other products, we can just export the reports that those companies produce. We also sometimes run different tools on the the full genome sequence to be able to identify some gene variants associated with specific behaviors or responses in the scientific literature. So those tools are really useful to shine the light on the gene variants you have and what those gene variants are telling us in terms of interventions or studies that have been done to decide or inform the decision-making process when we pick the experiments.
Of the 23andMe or Ancestry.com SNPs that they provide, what are the most powerful ones or meaningful ones, do you think, for longevity and health for people to look at in planning their choices?
That's a really good question. I should probably ask my co-founder Adam to share about this.
Sure.
There's so many that he's always thinking about. There's a few. What I would say is the ones that are related to the risk of cardiovascular illnesses, and the ones that define any expected behavior in terms of metabolic pathways in either specific overall behavior or in specific cells, like even like the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes for breast cancer. It's in the end just a metabolic regulation of the uptake of glucose. And so I think those ones across the body are always, correlated. You can almost see that someone always has the same variants. Don't know if they're expressed, but it's not often that they have only this one and not this one. So there's clusters of people who have different groups of variants that apply to different things and are important for different for preventative purposes, are different interventions linked to them essentially.
Sure, like the ApoE4, a lot of people ask about that for Alzheimer's and cardiovascular risk. And I think 23andMe and Ancestry, they both check that very easily. And
they both have it. And unfortunately, it's not easy to then get a blood test and start monitoring that in the long run yet, hopefully soon.
And it certainly is. It's an evolving space. There are new ideas all the time, and we have so much to learn about the genome and what all those things mean. It's a lot of information, but teasing out the meaning is really a challenge. Do you use do you recommend any supplements for the people on your program? Is that part of your program?
Yeah. So a lot of people who work on, I would say, actually pretty much any type of experiment. Usually if it's a specific dietary pattern, there will probably be some experiments linked to trying different supplements. For exercise too, for sleep as well. So we have like things like melatonin, magnesium, glycine, all these things, and they're also set up in an experiment. So we'll basically have the opportunity to test that with people and see if taking melatonin every single day at a specific time consistently will actually lead to an improvement in their sleep quality. And it's fantastic to be able to do that and to get the data from the Oura ring and to say, well, actually, there's no difference. We can't really measure anything. But actually, for some people, it has. And, melatonin is such a specific one that I'm not sure if that's something that be compensated by different habits. So Andrew Huberman says that one of the most important things you can do is look at the sun in the morning and look at light outside and, look up and look at the sky because it kind of sets your circadian rhythm, and you start producing the melatonin at this point, and you release it at the end of this cycle almost. And so all these things I think are super interesting, the magnesium as well, and the opportunity to test that for different people and to understand in the future when we have maybe a number of people who've done this and we're able to look at ways, some of the markers that are allowing us to predict what how someone will react to these things. And so being more accurate in the heuristic and saying, well, actually, you just joined, but we've got all your historical data on the Oura ring and we've got your 23andMe, so we can say, you're more likely to perform well on magnesium at 7 p.m. Before bed than the average person who maybe wouldn't get any benefit on that. So that's where the value would be. Yeah.
Yeah, and having all that ongoing live biometric data on them as well, you can give them a supplement, see how they respond to it, that individual person, because everybody's sort of different. We all have different complexities in our lives. That's beautiful. And then immediately see how they do with it. That's great. Are you looking, in addition to the health side, on the longevity side, are you looking at any specific longevity supplements like, with Dave Sinclair with sirtuins and NAD enhancers or resveratrol or any of those?
A lot of people who are members of SPAN today use NAD. Resveratrol, I don't know. A couple of people on metformin. I think it's probably a third of our users right now who are on one of these
oh, really?
for longevity purposes. And so I think, we're definitely, Adam on the calls or on the report is able to advise with that. I don't think, unfortunately, we'll see the results, and I don't know if we'll be able to observe something that will tell us, is that NAD product efficient today? Is it leading to the variations we expect, to then infer that the longitudinal effect would be that you get the benefits? That's, I think, going to be a little bit difficult to say, but we're definitely able to advise and to say, if you do take it, we recommend these brands, and we don't work with one particular brand, so we just look at all the ones you have available around you, and all these things.
What they have. I wonder, do you see in your patients any of the other more aggressive longevity drugs like rapamycin or any of the senolytics?
We got a few questions.
Or it's mainly metformin, I guess, is the most popular one now.
Yeah, metformin, because I think it's so accessible, it's cheap. With rapamycin, I think a few people have mentioned it. And so at the beginning, we thought maybe it would be useful to see if we can get the ability to prescribe it off-label. We haven't seen that pattern repeat for now. I think people who want it have found a way to get it. And so I don't think it's also the use case that most people want to focus on right now. So for us, I think it's the key is that our users know that diet, sleep, and exercise, that holistic lifestyle management will get them where they need to get. And the goal is optimize health to the maximum potential and then maintain that for as long as possible. So follow the trend, monitor, and make sure that if you reach a certain level, you can maintain that for as long as possible, and you live to 70 or 80 at least, with the same quality of life as you have now at 40. And maybe after that, you can expect some more natural aging.
I love all the biomarkers and the biometrics you're gathering to help you really customize and personalize the longevity and the lifestyle plan for your patients. I'm wondering that there's a new class of biomarkers coming out in the longevity space that are biological clocks, that, as opposed to our chronological clock, which we just measure by our birth date, and how many years we've lived, the biological clocks, things like epigenetic methylation clocks or glycination clocks, or do you use any of those to monitor response to your program with the patients?
So we don't require it because they're quite expensive still. So we only, if the members are interested in it, we definitely can recommend the brands. And if they're looking to get them, that's always a plus to have this kind of data and to be able to repeat it as well. I think it's the kind of test that's worth maybe doing once a year and looking at your long-term progress on these, see if you can make any substantial changes. So yeah, we do have maybe 10% of users who have done one of these. I feel like the Horvath clock is probably the most popular, but a lot of people have done glycinage and other tests like that. So I feel like glycation is also interesting. I feel like it's also maybe more correlated to the things you can actually change with your lifestyle. And maybe the other one is a bit more precise, but can also reflect a more an overall process of aging. And the glycation seems to be reflective of a lot of things that affect lifestyle
Yeah, the
changes.
glycan age is glycation clocks are nice. It's interesting. We just interviewed the CEO and founder of a company for a Horvath style epigenetic methylation clock, and they're releasing it now, a consumer version for under $100. And
Oh, wow.
I'll put it in the show notes there, or I'll pass you the information. The interesting thing, also, another person we just spoke to for our series is Kara Fitzgerald, who's a physician who just published a prospective randomized pilot study. It's only about 40 patients, but the fact was remarkable that they did an 8-week lifestyle intervention, and they did a methylation clock, a Horvath style epigenetic methylation clock at the beginning, at the end of the 8-week lifestyle intervention. And they found that a 3-year reversal of the methylation age by that study. And of course, it raises a lot of questions. Reversing epigenetic clocks, we don't know if that means that it reverses the age. It could be like gray hair, if you make your gray hair as a phenotypic marker of aging, gray hair, everybody agrees. But if you dye it black, it doesn't necessarily mean you're younger. You're just, that marker of age goes. But anyway, maybe we'll be seeing some epigenetic clocks more and more on as another tool in our toolbox for these things.
Definitely, yeah. I had no idea that they were coming up with tests that are under $100, but I think that's definitely going to make it more accessible, and so more people will do it. Yeah.
I know you use the concept of habit stacking with SPAN Health members. How does that help them, and can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the idea is, almost this approach of validated learning, where you try an intervention in a very scientific, experimental way. You use some of the data to validate that change has worked for you. And so based on a specific goal, whether it's reducing resting heart rate, increasing HRP, limiting your glucose variability throughout the day or the week, all these things can be measured and then compared against your baseline. So for the 2 weeks you're doing that experiment, we can compare the data and actually show you tangibly, okay, you've got a 10% improvement on your glucose variability by doing this consistently for 2 weeks. The caveat that is obviously that a lot of other factors in your life, if you're going on vacation, if anything else happens, we can see some of this data changing. So we're trying to obviously know as much as possible and try to decide whether we exclude data, increase the span of the time we take to conclude on the experiment, or change anything like this. But then once you found something that seems to be working and provides the right ratio of effort to benefits, we try to basically add it on the app and help people essentially find an event in their lifestyle that already exists. And it could be, someone who's already used to drinking a glass of water when they come back from work at 6 p.m. and then say, okay, every time you have that glass of water, we'll think about the next habit that you want to implement at that time. And so I think that's the general concept of habit stacking, is finding a different way to stack habits on top of other ones that already exist, and sometimes to reverse negative ones and to replace them with positive ones, and then to add on top of that. And it feels like it's something that's been validated so many times in scientific literature, but it's a very effective way of increasing the adherence to something is positive for you, and doing it for as long as possible. And a good way also when you drop off from going a month on holidays and coming back and trying to get back to your routine, to start picking things up again one by one.
Yeah, that's a great tool. So as a patient coming in, first of all, do you accept patients from all over the world, or do they need to be in a certain area? Are there any insurance issues, or is everyone pays cash, or who can come into your program?
Yeah, so pretty much everyone today, as long as your goal is to improve your health, optimize it, and then work on your longevity as well. I'd say we do less clinical stuff. So if you come in and have a very specific pathology, chronic condition you want to deal with, we may be not the best platform to deal with that. That's the main difference. We take people from all over the world, I would say, overall. We haven't had many people join outside of the US, to be honest, just a couple of people in Europe, but that's pretty much it today. And yeah, people pay out of pocket usually for the majority of the users. What I would say is maybe 10-15% of our customers today get a fitness allowance from their companies. They work at tech companies like Square, Twitter, Instagram, Audible, and so they get a fitness allowance that they can spend on pretty much anything since COVID. Obviously, it used to be for gym memberships, and now most of these gyms have been closed, so the companies have said you can now spend it on a Peloton or any digital alternative to a gym. And so they spend it on Span as well, which I think is great for a lot of these employees of these companies. And so we've also seen people, one person specifically, get a doctor's note saying that they need some sort of fitness program to manage weight or so on. And in that case, they can get Span, basically make it eligible for HSA or FSA accounts, which again, is a tax-free allowance. So it's a great benefit for them.
What are the most significant, or what is the biggest impact on your patients, do you think, patients on your members as far as being in this program? What are you seeing the most profound benefits for them?
I would say, interestingly, it's sleep quality. We have seen, it's a split that's about equal between people who work on diet, sleep, and exercise. It's about 30% each. And yet, if you look at the overall data of every single member we have, we always see an improvement. And so the average improvement for each user based on their start date with the program is about 15% improvement within 20 days. And then that staircase pattern where they've got an improvement from making a first change and it's starting to smooth out and to be stable, and they move on to the next one and they increase various markers of sleep quality in that way. So reducing the amount of interruptions at night, increasing the amount of time they spend in recovery sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and all these aspects. So sleep seems to be the number one benefit that's common to all the users.
Yeah, there's only so much a company can do with given resources. I'm wondering, you have such a deep treasure trove of data from your members. Do you plan on publishing any of the results as in a scientific thing? And I realize it takes resources and time, and you need to focus on the mission. But do you see yourselves doing that in the future?
Definitely, yeah. So, we've got a clinical background mostly in the team, and I think we believe that the best way to contribute overall and to make everyone advance is to publish some of the learnings. And so right now, like you said, we're still a small business and growing pretty quickly. So there's a lot of operational realities to doing this kind of work. We are also raising money. So as soon as we close all of these things, I think we'll be in a position to start planning and deciding, what is the first best study or trial that we can set up to start making a difference. And I think I'd love to do that with clinical partners. I don't think we should do this on our own necessarily. So I think it would be great to partner with a university that's maybe already looking at wearables and technology that's being used to try different aspects of health. And obviously they've got their hypothesis and other thing to test. And so we'd love to be able to leverage both our experience and the data, but also the platform itself and the ability to look at that with them across time.
Yeah, that's so exciting to get all that information out there. Well, now in our last couple minutes here, what can you share about your personal lifestyle choices that you found to be most effective for you as far as exercise, diet, sleep, and so on?
That's a good question. A lot of things. Number one on diet is probably not too many carbohydrates. Not necessarily, I'm definitely not in the range of a ketogenic diet or anything like that. But I feel like the current recommendation of eating about 45% of your diet in carbohydrates simply doesn't work for me. It messes up my sleep, my blood sugar levels are unstable, and I'm unable to maintain that diet and make sure I have blood sugar levels that are not increasing every 3 months if I repeat an HbA1c test. So I just don't feel it's working for me. But lowering that, and when I do have carbohydrates, having them for lunch rather than dinner seems to also mitigate the impact on sleep. And so that's probably number one, is knowing how to time these different things. And it makes sense, it's, the blood sugar is going to be used throughout the activity in the afternoon. Makes more sense than having that for dinner. And, if you're not going for a walk after dinner and you're going straight to bed, not using that actually. Second one is alcohol. And I've naturally, as a result of focusing on my health, not more, stopped drinking. I wasn't necessarily drinking a lot, but I stopped drinking completely, almost, I'd say, because of the impact I saw on my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate when sleeping after a glass of wine. I've also learned how to time it, and I see that a glass of red wine is much better before a meal, before dinner, than after dinner or during dinner. And so, so many things like that around alcohol, I think, that need to be discovered. And for the last one, maybe I would say on exercise, I think I've underestimated, playing one sport and underestimating the rest of the spectrum, strength training, resistance training, and probably also heart rate zone 2 training, and pushing myself to be able to get to that level of 180, 190 beats per minute, and feel like I can still perform for a good amount of time, and doing that as part of specific workouts and trainings. I've been able to really apply that to the game and improving how I perform, because I used to make, when I started back after COVID, I'd play 30 minutes, and for the last 50 minutes I'd miss all the balls basically. And just training in that way, making sure that I'm running, I'm doing these programs where you're running for 2 minutes and then 5 minutes and 2 minutes and 3 minutes, and you walk in between to lower and bring up your heart rate, has pushed that much faster than in the past. I've been able to recover much faster than I used to. So I feel like, looking at these things, these numbers, when you're training and trying to get back to good overall fitness, is really important.
And how about supplements?
Supplements is vitamin D for me. It's obvious, but it's something that even my family wasn't necessarily obvious. But obviously, I have a brown, dark skin, so it's quite difficult for me to get the minimum required to maintain a good amount of vitamin D. When I tested it the first time, I was extremely low. I was under, half under the lower part of the range. And I repeated it. I tried a vitamin D supplements and it didn't work. And I repeated again and it didn't work that well, until I started changing my lifestyle as well. And then kept taking the vitamin D. And for some reason, the absorption or the impact of taking it, especially in the winter when I'm going out less, has been much better by changing my lifestyle. Vitamin D plus lifestyle, I would say, in terms of supplement, has been the one that helped me a lot. Haven't been able to necessarily, because that's on a very long time frame, to correlate that with the impact. But I do feel like in the winter, if I'm not taking it, I'm feeling, more under the weather than when I am taking.
Mm-hmm. And then any medications, metformin or rapamycin?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. Haven't made up my mind, but I will definitely try these things. I think, we're getting to, all of these things are so new. I feel like in the last 5 years, the understanding on these things has completely changed. And I feel like in the next 5 years, we'll probably have some sort of way to measure the impact of these things and to decide, maybe not in the long term, but on the short term, how to personalize the intake of those
Yeah.
medicines for longevity purposes rather than the original purpose.
Yeah, we're going to be interviewing Nur Barzilai. Dr. Barzilai is a strong proponent of metformin, and he is the organizer of the prospective human longevity trial with metformin, the so-called TAME program that I think is starting this year. So we'll know in a few years at least from that controlled trial, at least if there's an effect based on the choices they've made on the dosing, the parameters and everything like that. So, but that's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, this has been great talking with you today, and it's so wonderful the work you're doing, helping patients make choices in their lifestyle that can improve their health and their longevity. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And we've had this conversation in the past, but it feels like we are all on the same mission, and it's really exciting to see how fast this space is moving and changing. How many people are building, and even on the scientific side and the clinical side, how many people are setting up new programs to do research, to shine the lights on things like metformin and those and these things. So it feels like this is going to move pretty quickly in the next 5 and 10 years. We're going to have a lot of new things to incorporate in our lifestyles.
Yes, an exciting time to be in this space, and I look forward to getting together with you again and revisiting this topic very soon. So again, thanks so much, Patrick Samy, for being on the show with us today. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Cheers.
Note, this is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking of it because of something you have seen here. If you find this to be of value of you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support the work we do on this channel. Also, we take your suggestions and advice very seriously. Please let us know what you'd like to see on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll hope to see you next time.